Thank you, Jesse and Christine S., for the beautiful music this morning. Welcome to Unity of Tacoma. We're an online spiritual community with a physical presence here in Tacoma, Washington. Whether you're joining us online or here with us today here at South 74th Street, we're glad you've chosen to spend this time with us. I have a special event coming up this Thursday. It's my wedding anniversary. 6 years. We pulled off a genuine elopement. People didn't find out we were married until it was announced on Facebook, and we did it away from most people who know us. We did it in Yakima, Washington. The person who conducted that ceremony is Cheryl Rorette. Cheryl is now the regional rep for our region, and she'll be involved in helping to guide Raylene, help support things as things move forward. I've got a scheduled call with her this week to talk some about that. So my wedding anniversary is this Thursday, and what we did when we started dating around a movie. We started dating because I had been drawn into the series of movies called Twilight. Do you know Twilight? Oh yes, my granddaughter came to live with me when she was 12 years old, and the first movie came out, and the second movie came out while she lived with me, and the third movie came out while she lived with me, and then she left. And the fourth movie came out, so I had to go see it by myself. And then finally the fifth movie was getting ready to come out, and our local theater was going to have a marathon. All the movies on one day, on the opening day. You buy a ticket to go in at 11 o'clock and start the first movie, and it goes till 1 o'clock in the morning when the last one ends, with a 30-minute intermission in between the movies. And I wanted to go, and I didn't want to go by myself, so I just posted it online. Raylene had been a Facebook friend for a couple of years, and she said, sure, I'll go. And so we made plans to go, and by the end of the fifth movie, we were in a relationship. It's just a whole one day of 5 dates in one day. That's the way it works. There's one of the elements of those Twilight movies is the idea of imprinting. Now, among these characters, it happens among the werewolves. Imprinting does really happen in the animal world. It's a scientific thing that does happen, but the scientific thing was borrowed for a movie purpose, for mythological purposes, if you will. The Twilight mythology extends imprinting to the humans, who are also happen to be werewolves. And it's symbolic of those connections we make. That's why these movies are so compelling. That the symbolism there, that imprinting is symbolic of the connections we can make and the depth of connection we can have with one another through what is called here the faculty of love. The faculty of love is not always what it sounds like. Love is a binding energy. It's an emotional energy that binds us to one another. It binds us to the universe. It binds us to other people, to animals. In nature, the flamingo, to me, represents this faculty. The flamingo is hypersocial in the way that humans are hypersocial. You don't see films of a single flamingo flying. You see a film of all of the flamingos flying. And that's the way they live. Both male and females care for the young. The flamingos do. In early Egyptian culture, the flamingo was a representation on earth of the sun god Ra, which was the most powerful, and scientifically, all energy that we experience comes from the sun, right? That's where mythology and science just happen to meet, because in that mythology, the sun god Ra sent the flamingo as a reminder of the work that the sun does to keep the world going. The flamingo represents, in mythologies, it represents the emotional nature. To see a flamingo in a dream, it said, it suggests that you have a strong sense of community, or you crave a strong sense of community. The flamingo is represented in art. It's represented in some of the most ancient art as occupying Eden. When people tried to draw a painting of the biblical Garden of Eden, they would put the most beautiful animals in there, and the flamingo was always part of it from the earliest. It's in Peru. The flamingo is a sacred animal. Shows up in many works of art. And it's still a focus of art. Images of the flamingo are sold by the millions each year, it turns out. And not just those plastic ones that you have that just put in a yard. It shows up, it's the unofficial symbol of the state of Florida, the flamingo is. It was the name of an iconic Las Vegas casino. And almost every city has some business named flamingo, one thing or another. Because it's just such a beautiful bird, and putting it on your sign is attention-getting. It grabs the attention. It's just a thing of beauty, and we feel connected to that, apparently, or it wouldn't show up in all those commercials and everything. The faculty of love is your source of connectedness. You're connected to all species on this planet in some way. You're connected genetically. But we are hypersocial, we humans. We are connected to one another, and we feel a connection with one another that doesn't seem to, it's a connection that doesn't seem to be felt by other species, but we don't really know that. We are hypersocial, and in that, first of all, both male and females take care of the nest and take care of the young. As humans evolved to stand up, as humans evolved to stand erect and walk erect, one of the physical things that happened is that women began to have to give birth prematurely in comparison to other primates. Other primates are born, and within a day they can walk around and they can hold on to things. Have you noticed that? Why don't humans? Well, when we started to stand up, the transition to being upright forced women to give birth to a helpless baby that is unable to do anything other infant primates can do. And it's the standing up is also the source of the excess pain that human females have in childbirth that other species don't seem to have in childbirth. We are an evolving species when it comes to women giving birth, because if you take away modern medicine, we would be evolving into a species that eventually won't have that kind of pain. But what's going to happen is a whole bunch of people die off. What happens when women are giving birth without modern medicine? A lot of women die, don't they? A lot of babies die. The others died off. The ones who couldn't give birth that way died off, and it contributed to the evolution of a species that is hypersocial, because it forced women to take care of the baby for a long time, and it forced the men to be there with them helping, because without them they were helpless. And in early society, the ones who didn't take care of each other died off. So what's left is a humanity that needs each other in close proximity. And if we're not in close proximity, we try to approximate it with a cell phone or with something. There's a connectedness that's taking place. It's an emotional need. It's an emotional energy. It's an energetic connection, and we call that energy love. When we hate someone, all we're doing is withholding love, aren't we? That's it. Why hate someone? Usually it's because they've caused us pain. Where does emotional pain come from? It comes from the faculty of love, because we want the connectedness so much. Unrequited love. is the theme for countless stories, books, movies, series, TV series, etc. To me, all the other emotions follow love. Shame has to do with how we want to be seen and how we want to see ourselves. It has to do with relationship. Fear is most often anger. Anger is most often anger toward another person, not anger toward a rock out there. That's where our anger, fear, is most often a fear of another person. And we have reasons to fear nature in some ways, but most often, fear is just a fear of another person. Studies show that women in our society, the greatest fear is being physically attacked. And for men, the greatest fear is being ridiculed. Is it any wonder we can't understand each other sometimes? My goodness. I want to introduce a topic, and the topic is pseudoscience. And that's not a put down, pseudoscience. It's an understanding. I want to talk about pseudoscience versus science. There was a news story this week that I really enjoyed. There's a small town about 130 miles south of Anchorage, Alaska. And this town was having a local government meeting, and by court order, the invocation was given by a Pastafarian pastor. Do you know the word Pastafarian? It's a satire. It's a satiric church. It's the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. And the idea is that a glob of noodles and meat together could run the universe just as well as any imaginary being could. And if you want to imagine a flying spaghetti monster, your imagined being is just as valid as anybody else's imagined being. The local government meeting in Alaska was taking place. The Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster was created when the Kansas Board of Education started having some very silly hearings on the teaching of evolution in school. In the 21st century, they were going to debate whether to teach that science in school. And so they were ordered by the court. The city was ordered by the court. Some other plaintiffs were involved in the suit. One was Jewish who had been turned down. She wasn't allowed to give a prayer because she was Jewish. Another person was atheist, not allowed to give the opening invocation, but they kept having the invocation as part of the government proceeding. Well, here's his prayer when the court allowed him to go in and give this prayer. He said, "So I'm called to invoke the power of the true inebriated creator of the universe, the drunken tolerator of all the lesser and more recent gods, and maintainer of gravity here on earth. May the great flying spaghetti monster rouse himself from his stupor and let his noodly appendages ground each assembly member in their seats." The person who did that is named Baron Fletcher. And his brother, Randy Fletcher, was a former congregant of mine. He lives in Columbia, Missouri. I posted this story, and Randy's wife posted this, said, "This is Randy's brother." And so now he and I are Facebook friends. He gave that prayer, he said, because so many people seem to feel they can't do any work without being overseen by a higher authority. So that compulsion to find someone to guide you is what drives a lot of our religious expression. Well, during that prayer, no one stood, except those. He was standing remotely because people wanted to see this thing, but so that they couldn't sit. One person turned to face the wall while the prayer was being given. There were other silly, just as silly responses as behaviors, but it illustrates the emotional power of religion. The emotional power of religion, and what I'm going to call pseudoscience. Here's how pseudoscience works. I have this deep well of emotion, as you have, a deep well of emotions, whether they're accessible or not. As I develop those emotions, that well of emotions, I form emotional connections with it. I form emotional connections with a lover who then becomes a wife. who becomes family. I have that emotional connection with friends, with colleagues. I can feel that connection with all of humanity. I can feel that connection with the universe. I can feel it. It is real. But scientifically, all of the connectedness happens within me. It's my faculty of imagination and my faculty of love working together. The emotional processes are a function of the brain's development for a hypersocial species. This is how we are evolved to be connected. I feel connected whether the other person does or not. But because I feel connected, and because I have the faculty of imagination, I can imagine that there really is an energy connection right between us. I can feel it. There's an energy connection, but is it real? Or did I imagine it? What difference does it make? I have to understand the difference between pseudoscience and science when I start to address these things anymore. That doesn't make it bad or wrong, the fact that it's pseudoscience. It gives us insight into our own spiritual processes, a greater understanding of ourselves. And here's the thing. If I'm having the experience of being energetically connected, if I'm having that experience, it doesn't matter whether it's real energy between us or whether it's just my emotional energy driving it. I'm still having the experience of being connected. I can develop that in ways that promote healing. I can develop the faculty of love in ways that promote well-being without creating fantasy. If that really is fantasy, who knows? I can develop that in ways that promote healing, promote community, that promote well-being for myself, for others, and for the world. There's a downside to the faculty of love. And the faculty of love is not a downside, it's a shadow. Everything has a shadow. The shadow of love is attachment. Oh, we get attached to how things are. We get attached to having our way. We get attached, we form these emotional attachments to things that other animals don't seem to be emotionally attached to. Other species, some do. That means that it's a function of evolution. But as we form inappropriate attachments, inappropriate emotional attachments, we create our own pain. Desire is an aspect of love, which makes the capacity for deception a shadow aspect. We're willing to deceive people in order to have this loving connection. We're willing to we're willing to lie to one another just to have it. Craving, according to Buddhism, craving is the source of all suffering. Now, suffering, life has pain, but suffering, there's a phrase I like to use: useless, unnecessary suffering. Together? Useless, unnecessary suffering. Somebody hurts me, I get up. Somebody knocks me down, I get up, I go on my way. I hate them for 2 years. That's all I can think about for 2 years is getting even. How long have I suffered over it? 2 years. How long was the pain? About a day or less. Where craving arises, especially the craving for love, it functions something like an appetite. And that needs reassurance, that needs connection, that shows up as gossip, that shows up as chatting. All the needs for connection that we have, they show up in so many ways. They're very real. And we can develop this faculty so that we function in ways that represent wholeness. The practice for the faculty of love is connection. Practicing connection through words, through thoughts, through prayers, if you will, if you use that, through conversation. Practice connection any way you can. If your means of connection is your smartphone, use it to connect. Have that connection, but do it in ways that are wholesome and that bring you joy and true connection, not in ways that cut us off. Let's take a moment to develop that faculty through meditation.